Hi everyone, I'm Natalia. Welcome to my channel. This is going to be a video different from my other videos. We're not going to be talking tarot. We will be talking about recent fiction. That's right, fiction, which is surprising for me. Fiction that I have read in a period time of 3 months hibernation period and soul searching, and all of this fiction is only by women writers. So if you are interested in fiction, if you are looking for exploring women writers, this is a video for you. If you like lengthy videos from me where I share things and discuss things a little bit more in depth, and you just find them relaxing in general, the way there are some YouTubers that I find incredibly relaxing, this is a video for you too. So I was actually negotiating earlier about making this video because today's technically my day off, but I don't even think I have days off as a self-employed person. Day off for me means there's no client hours. But usually on my days off, I always create content, marketing, all the other things that I got to do. And I was gambling with myself. I was telling David that I don't know if I should make this video. Part of me really wants to talk about books because I love books so much. Part of me feels that I am avoiding doing a much needed work. So I'm not sure if I should do a video because this is part of my play. Especially this YouTube channel is part of my pleasure and enjoyment and play, or if I should do what I should do. And David was very amused. He said, well, how long is it going to take you to make a video? And I said, I don't know, about 40 minutes. He'd look at me like I was crazy gambling over a 40-minute playtime period. But it made me think about today's hustle cultures that I've been thinking about a lot, and how I at least find myself continuously in this pocket spots where there's a part of me leans toward respite, relaxation, playtime, leisure time, enjoying in activities that are just for myself. And yet there's a part of me that is pulling myself back, that is judging, places judgment on wanting to do those things, and telling myself that no, I need to really focus on work. And that has been driving me, to be honest, really insane lately. To balance it out has been really difficult. So if you are in the same boat, I totally feel you. So how did it happen that I read over 20 books in 3 months period? Because I went crazy. No, I did not go crazy. Not in any kind of a serious sense. But in January was when certain things in my 19-year now relationship has come to much more to the surface. Some things I was already aware of. That catapulted me into a space of searching for answers. As you know me, I seldom read fiction. There was a period in my 20s when I read a ton of fiction, primarily classical fiction. And ever since I went into undergrad and grad school, I just shifted my focus primarily on nonfiction and fell in love with nonfiction writers. And to this day, I adore nonfiction. It's very hard for me to read fiction these days because I will read fiction and I will enjoy it, but there's the analytical part of me feels that I'm getting so much more out of nonfiction subject matters. So what the heck happened that I ended up reading so many nonfiction writers, all women writers, from January to March in 3 months period? As I said, I was looking for answers, and I was hoping that I would find an answer to my relationship questions in these books. Most of the books I ended up purchasing were about marriage and relationship, unbeknown to me, just so happened. And of course, I did not find any answers in these books because they're not going to give me an answer. The answers are within me. I have to find my own answers. But they did give me, some of them did give me some perspective. And most importantly, I think I needed the time period, that immersion in the books. I also traveled to Seattle to stay for some time periods with my sister who lives there for distancing and time away. And I visited this charming independent bookstore on Mercer Island. And just like any charming independent bookstore, they always are ran by charming, voracious readers who work there. And they put, I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, independent bookstore are infamous for that, put little excerpts from people who work in a bookstore about what it is that they loved about the book and how they recommend it. So most of the books I ended up selecting were recommendation by individuals who work there. Not only that, there are about 5 people who work there. 90% of the books I selected were all suggestions by one woman. And when they introduced her to me, I kid you not, she was older. She was probably in her 60s. She had almost the same haircut as I do, a little bit longer, all white. And she looked at me, she said, "I love your style." And I said, "I love yours." It was uncanny, absolutely uncanny. So let me share with you some of these writers. Some of the books I absolutely loved and will highly recommend. Some of them were good. I would not say that they blew my socks off. That's a funny phrase for somebody who seldom wears socks. Blew my sandals off. And I'm on Goodreads. I gave pretty much all of these books, even the books that I thought were okay, I gave it 4 stars because I feel that I can give any less to a woman writer. A woman being able to write today, I think, is an amazing thing. There's 2 books that I don't have physically with me. I send them to my sisters. They're both by the same author, so I'll talk to them last. I'll try to add all of the books down below. And I did not figure out how to do so the camera doesn't mirror back, so it might mirror back to you in a reverse. Sorry. So the first book that I read, and this is probably the only one that I remember that I read first, and the rest are not in order, was Miranda July's latest book, All Fours. When I got this book, David was very surprised. He said, "You like Miranda July?" I said, "You know Miranda July?" He said, "Yeah, she's what, like a creative person. She has the movies that she has done." And he was very surprised. And I said, "Why are you so surprised?" And he said, "I think if you are going to look at Miranda July and look at her work and her type of work, it may not be your cup of tea." He was not wrong. I did not love the book. But I did not hate it. It was very interesting. She's a great writer. All Fours is a book, and I'm not going to give away a lot about what ending or what of each one of this book in case if you want to read it. But All Fours is a story of a woman who is pretty much having marital crisis. And she decides to go on this trip, but instead of going on this trip, she pretty much stations herself in a small town in California where she rents a hotel room and she spends a lot of money renovating that specific hotel room, and a lot of things do take place in that hotel room. A lot of things are centered around the theme and around the emphasis and what the hotel room overall represents. The reason why I did not like it is because her whole late awareness about how she feels about her marriage it was very frustrating for me, let's put it that way, how unaware the protagonist came across. And I get a sense that it's quite autobiographical. There was a lot of moments where the main character, the choices that she made felt like they were coming from a very privileged space of having financial opportunities to do certain things. Nothing wrong with that. I think everybody is at different levels of privilege in their life. For me, is that particular aspect and how she went about on her path of self-discovery was not very relatable. So for that reason, I didn't really fully love the book. I'd be curious if any of you have read it. I'm sure that some of these books, some of you have read it. I have 2 books that I picked up from Racine recommendation, who has YouTube channel. All of you know Owl Moon 513. Actually, this video, I got this idea for this video from watching Racine talk about lately reading a lot of female writers, and I thought I just read a whole bunch of women writers. It would be really interesting to make a video and to share these books because when I went on this whole women writers only book binge, I was really looking for interesting women writers to read, and it's actually quite challenging to find that. It's really, I do find it quite challenging to find good women writers. So Miranda July, All Fours was so-so. This one I picked up in that independent bookstore, Liars, by Sara Manguso, or Manguso. So this one I picked up, and then David said, wow, this book was on NPR's must-read books for 2025. So I was happy to hear that. Surprise, surprise, also about relationship. The book explores the relationship between 2 creative individuals. She's a writer, I believe. He is a she's a aspiring writer, and he is a filmmaker. And the whole book is about her re-examining relationship of what happens when you step into not only martyrdom and marital situation, but also into motherhood, and how that affects one's pursuit of creativity. There's also juxtaposition and exploration how women and men tend to be affected differently. And the ending is quite surprising. I really enjoyed this. I can't say I loved it, but I really did enjoy it. Like I said, a lot of these books are shaka relationship. I picked up this book from also the bookstore. Love the cover. The Guest by Emma Cline. Emma Cline, my understanding, has written quite a few other books. And this one was interesting. Each one of these books gave me such a different perspective on things. This is a book about a young girl, Alex. I love the name of the protagonist, Alex. And basically, she really doesn't have much going on for her, poor thing. She really, she's pretty much entangled in a relationship with an older man who's her pretty much sugar daddy. And it's about her traveling with him to Long Island, where he's going to the lavish parties, and how she's merely trying to survive majority of the book. And it's an interesting perspective on not only how she sees and relates to herself, but how she sees and she relates to others. So this was quite interesting. Again, would be curious if any of you have read it. I loved this book. This is by Sara Mesa, Scar. Sara Mesa is not this Friday, because this book was translated, so she's from Spain. Wow. I'm actually, think about it, a lot of people from Spain are some of my favorite writers. This is fascinating. This was so interesting to me. I asked David to read it. Whew. It's the premise is so different. It's a relationship that starts with this woman and this guy as the pen pals. It's a bizarrely, I can articulate it, relationship where he's basically getting her things that she wants. And it starts out with particular special edition copy of books. And then it takes from there. And how things tend to expand and blow out of proportion. It's a look into... I was less interested with her. I was so interested with the guy protagonist in this. And just his whole internal world. In the end, the way that he articulates what has taken place and how she has caused him pain was so honest and took so much accountability. This is just... I really recommend this book. It's so interesting. It's so very different than a lot of other books I read, a lot of other relationship I read. This was so fascinating. So fascinating. So it says here, when Sonia meets Knut in an online literary forum, they begin a long-distance relationship that quickly becomes obsessive and derailed by excess. I won't even read anymore. It is just something... It was so interesting. So this is I would highly recommend. I had to pick up this book in that bookstore because look at the cover. Do you see this? How can you not pick up a book with that type of cover and with the title Delphi? This is by Clare Pollard. This was, again, book about marriage, book about relationship. And it was... it had an abstract way of being written, where the writer lost me throughout the book. This was an okay read for me. It wasn't super enjoyable. It wasn't as I hope it would be. But it was an okay read. So, that's all I'm going to say about that. Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. Wow. This is such a young and upcoming writer from London. And I was surprised. Some of these writers are so young. They really, really surprised me with their writing and where they're going and the places they take you. This is really, really interesting. So this is about a young girl who is pretty much a photographer. Her whole inner self-destructiveness was really fascinating to absorb throughout the book. Her whole entire unraveling, the ending really surprised me and shook me. Really did. This is... I would highly recommend this book. This was really... If you want something that is a page-turner, engaging, and interesting dimension into almost disintegration of the self, this would be it. I loved it. So that's Boy Parts by Eliza Clark. That was so good. Okay, so Grief is for Other People by Sloane Crosley. So Sloane Crosley is... this is actually quite autobiographical. I think it is actually autobiographical. She is... she's a writer. So basically, this is about... This was very interesting. This is about her processing grief of her friend, dear friend, who was an editor, who took his own life. And about, in the beginning of the book, how there is a burglary that occurs at her place and where particular jewelry pieces were stolen, and how she goes on a hunt to recover those pieces. It's just how she goes on a hunt to recover those pieces, and her dialogue and her reflection on what it all might mean is fascinating to watch, fascinating to read. All in all, very interesting writer. Really like this book. So this is Grief is for Other People by Sloane Crosley. There's one book that I'm holding that I did not get to finish. I did not care for this at all. It is Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle. Was also recommended by the bookstore. This is vignettes that go back and forth between young girls who are fighters, and pretty much enables a bird's view into what each one of those girls grappling with. I did not really care much for the story, for the vignettes. I didn't really care for the writing style. I struggled with this. It didn't keep me entertained. Although this book was highly rated, highly recommended, just didn't do it for me. So if you read this, let me know. Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle. So the Act of Desperation. Look at the cover. Again, a young writer. This is by a young writer. And this is a story about a young girl who is in love. And again, in love with an older man. Now that I'm thinking about it, there's a second book, right? Where young girl, older man. Yes. And then the books that I sent to my sister was also young. Now that I'm thinking about it. Because you know what's interesting about this? When I met my husband 19 years ago, I was 26 and he was 44. So we're 17 years apart, if I'm doing the math correctly. So this is interesting that I'm subconsciously drawn to these narratives of younger, older type of relationship. So this was a little bit of a painful read. Yeah, this was I'm trying to remember it because I don't remember this particular book very well. But this was, there was an element of fixation that she had with this man. And then he's now I remember, he had such a nasty way of treating her. There's an element of fixation that she had with him. And then there's an element of fixation he had on his previous ex. And basically, just like the title, The Act of Desperation, it is to extent that people are going to go to. It just was a painful read. There's certain books where protagonists as women are almost masochistically self-torturing themselves in particular relationship that is very hard for me to relate to, impossible for me to relate to. I have very strong boundaries about certain things that are absolute no for me. And so some of this, we're crossing those boundaries, and it was really difficult to relate to protagonist, even though there was very sufficient explanation why she would end up remaining in this destructive relationship. For me, it was still very difficult to fathom. This was okay. So, The Applicant by Nazil Koca, young officer from Turkey. Very interesting book. Again, this is written in, the protagonist is young girl. She is Turkish, and she lives in Berlin. And she works at the hotel, and she's trying to pretty much reappeal the thing that happened with her with the university in order to get a second chance, and also to have her visa to stay in Berlin. And so it's about your nationality, your homeland, being away from homeland, struggle of a young woman to try to find herself as an up-and-coming artist. She's a writer. And then she meets this really nice young man that pretty much offers her an opportunity to move in with him and to build a marital, safe life. So there's this torn, just like in Liars, between pursuing your creative career or in a way settling for the security or a perceived sense of security. I did enjoy this. This young girls, if I dare call them young girls, although they're young women who are writing these books, are really have such strong voice. They have such strong current point of internal suffering that really comes along in a lot of this book. So this is The Applicant. This was good. Another book by another young woman writer was Good Girl by Aria Aber. This was really, really interesting. Again, it is about a girl with, I believe, she's born in Germany, but her parents are from Afghanistan. And it's about her living in Berlin and her going through this whole self-identity search, and also her whole time trying to push away her heritage, trying to push away where she came from because of shame. A relationship again with an older man, and putting yourself in a scenario where you are again falling apart. Really interesting read of up and coming type of age at an older adulthood. But the protagonist, she was torturing me because, again, I have such a hard time with protagonists who will take in a certain level of abuse. None of these books had any explicit sexual abuse or verbal abuse, but it definitely had a sprinkle of that with this old young protagonist, and it was really painful to watch how many women are going through that and put themselves also through that, whether we can argue that they put themselves willingly or they're being put in those situations unwillingly by circumstances, by culture, by society. The painful to witness, but this was a good one. Milk Fat by Melissa Broder. Yeah, I forgot to say, this is another one that I did not really like that much. If I could, I would give it 3 stars. Good writing. It's a story about a woman and her whole obsessive relationship to her body and how she looks and food. And not until she meets this voluptuous girl that works in this yogurt shop, and they go on self-discovery, sexual journey for each other, into their own sexuality. And I get it. And I get the title Milk Fat, quite Freudian. And I just thought that the premise, milk fat, nurturance, desire for mother's milk, that goes undiscussed between the lines, the oral fixation towards food, all of those things. I found it quite, to me, reductionistic and banal, probably because I'm a shrink. And so for me, to take those concepts, they have to be more situated in much more deeper complexity than the ways they're situated in this book. And so for that reason, I just didn't really... I thought it was very obvious what was happening psychologically. And again, occupational hazard. But it might be something really worthwhile for somebody else. So Milk Fat, Melissa Broder. This book cracked, the parts of it that cracked me up. My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh, probably mispronouncing it. I know the writer has another book. This is my first book by this writer. Oh my God. The reason why it cracked me up is because the young protagonist is not feeling well. And so she finds this psychiatrist / I think it's psychiatrist because she's prescribing her medications. And the protagonist is, recent Columbia graduate. She's living in an upper apartment in East Side Manhattan. It's all paid for. Like the rest, she's basically a trust fund baby. She has all of her needs met. And she's feeling depressed and isolated, and also her relationship with her boyfriend is very destructive. So she finds this psychiatrist who then goes on this whole spree of overly medicating her. And a protagonist herself wants to be overly medicated. My year of rest and relaxation should be my year of being over medicated and being subdued in a medication coma. What made me laugh about it is the engagement between her and the psychiatrist, because it just was so ridiculously crazy and bizarre. And yeah, I believe such psychiatrists do exist. In my profession, there's a lot of people who should not be in my profession. But the extent to which this girl went to over-medicate herself, I cannot believe she survived. And the ending, and what she had to do to wake herself up from the slumber. Interesting, bizarre, and interesting read. Okay, I have the pile of books here that I really, really, really like. When my husband puts a book cover on the books, because he's so anal, that means he really liked it, because guess what? He read this book too. This is Anthropologists by Asigul Savas, also young writer. She lives in Paris, but I forgot what her background is. I like her writing so much that I have another book by her. This was really interesting, and it's such an interesting way to write. This is about a young couple living in Paris who are looking to purchase an apartment. And the way that she wrote it is a series of vignettes that jumps around, looking for apartment, hanging out with her friends, and then her protagonist as a young filmmaker also documenting this interviews that she's doing with people, Parisians, in a park. And then there's also parts of her and her family heritage. The whole book is like one big social cultural anthropology, is the way that it's reading. Fascinating way to approach writing, such an interesting and creative way to write a book. I read it, loved it. My husband read it, loved it. This might not be for everybody because it's so unconventional. But this is precisely why we loved it. It was really yummy. I can't wait to read her other book. So this is very good. The Anthropologist. Many of you might recognize this, recommended by Racine. Racine, if you don't know, reads a lot of, I think she really likes historical nonfiction, and I think she really likes horror genre, is one of her favorite reads. This is not horror by any means. The cover is also very gorgeous. This is Vivienne by Emmalea Russo. This is really, really interesting book. The way it's written is interesting. The premise is interesting. I bet a lot of you have read it if you follow Racing channel. It's about a girl and her relationship to her mother, right? Not her grandmother. And her daughter, and her daughter's relationship to her grandmother, who's an artist. All of them are really an artist. The way it's written is very interesting. It's about putting on this final grand show for her. There's a lot of intricate things that overlap. I just love the writing style. I love the narrative. I loved things that the dialogue and the whole plot brought about the art world and a perception of what we consider to be great art. And just overall writing. I will definitely read another book if Emmalea are going to write. I will definitely read the other book, because just like this, there's certain books, the way they're just written, I don't even care what the plot is. I don't even care how it's going to end. Just the writing itself is able to take me to certain places, and these books were. So I really enjoyed it. This one I picked up in the bookstore called Scaffolding by Laurel Elkin. Really enjoyed this book. This book explores two women. And it goes, so it's two women, but what's interesting is they both reside in the same apartment. One is the story of, they're both in Paris. One is, it's 2019. And it follows a miscarriage and a breakdown of Anna, who is a protagonist. She's a psychoanalyst, and she finds herself unable to return to work. And then it goes to 1972, exact same apartment. Now we see Florence and Henry, who are a young couple. They're renovating their kitchen, and she's finishing her degree in psychology, and she's also dropping into feminist activities and devotedly attending Jacques Lacan, who is a French psychoanalyst, famous French psychoanalyst, for putting mathematical spin on the unconscious. I really thought this was so interesting. The women are interesting. Their stories are interesting. There's also an element in here that shocked and surprised me. So if you're looking for a story for two women lives intercept and intertwine and how and why, this is a very interesting read. Scaffolding, Lauren Elkin. Okay, no surprise, also Racine influence, Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fado. I have recommended this for my husband, but he hasn't read it yet. I almost never read genre horror. This is it's not horror. It follows pretty much a psychopath. And I don't really read this type of books. Just not my cup of tea. Every time I try, it doesn't work out for me. Just like Terror of the Vampires. Love the Terror of Vampires, not my thing. And I wasn't really shocked or surprised how it ended. It didn't really knock me off. I almost foresaw why she was after this particular family. What I did love about it is this. Little fact about me, I was obsessing about forensic criminology. I actually minored in criminology and really wanted to pursue forensic psychology. Perfect for my analytical mind, right? And there was a period of time in grad school when I went down a very big rabbit hole on reading everything and anything, reading from a clinical perspective on psychopathy. What it did to me is it taught me tremendous amount of information about psychopathy. What it also did for me is now prevents me from watching films such as oh my god, Dexter and other movies where what was that other one? Is that Hannibal Lecter? Is it Lecter? Is that what it's called? The reason why, when you know so much about a subject matter and then you see it portrayed in film, you basically see everywhere where this is definitely not a psychopathic character because they will not do what's being portrayed. This book, the way that she has written about this character and her emotional flatness and just overall her relationship to herself and others is very accurate for how a psychopath would approach relational patterns. And I found that really interesting because that is, I think, is not very easy to do. So this was very, very interesting. For that reason, for me, wonder if how many of you have read it and whether you loved it. The Coin by Yasmin Zahar. Look at this, such a great cover. This is also, she's a Palestinian journalist and a writer born in Jerusalem. This is her first novel. I fucking love this novel. This is another one of those, along with Vivienne and along with this is just, it's a little bizarre. It's unraveling of a character. It is so interestingly written. There were so many things, so many sentences that got me to thinking. Oh, it has so many psychological components. Obsessiveness, compulsion, Fragmentation of the Self. I love this book so much. I love the writing style. I love how the author looks at things. I love how she writes about things. I love this book. What I have discovered reading so many books by women writers is that I realize that I love non-American writers. I love writers from other countries because I feel their voice and the way they write and the way they narrate is more, it's closer in proximity to my Eastern European upbringing and how I tend to think and how I tend to look at things. I love this book. This was a great read. Intimacies by Katie Kitamura. So, this was another one really interesting book. I put it in a pile for my husband to read. I put books that I need to take to Goodwill to donate, and then books that I said, okay, I think this is going to be worth it for you to read. This was really, really interesting. This is about a woman and her relationship to her lover, but more importantly, a woman, the protagonist, she's a translator, and she's a translator for the court system of I think United Nations, if I'm correct, and it's really, really interesting. Certain insights into the work of a translator, how she illuminates the way the meaning and significance can be lost when we don't really hear things in a native language, when they're being translated, and when the translator tries to emphasize things, the ways that the speaker, it had really interesting perspective on things. So this is very worth reading, very, very interesting book. Two more books that I don't have with me, the final two, that I did enjoy, let me pull them up, were by the same writer. One of them called Cleopatra and Frankestien by Coco Mellors. I really liked it. It's about relationship between a young girl and an older man, and her artistic stagnation and his addictions. And Coco Mellors then wrote another book called Blue Sisters, which I really liked. It's relationships between three sisters. One of their sisters has passed away. There's a grieving period. It's relationship between them and their womanhood and relationship to their mother. I really enjoyed it. Coco is an interesting writer, so I really liked it. So those were the other two that I've read. So yeah, this was my 3 months in fiction. What did I learn reading all of these books? Well, I actually picked up some other books that are by other women writers that are stacked up. I have probably about 5 or 7 more that I picked up I haven't read yet. What have I learned? I learned that it allowed me to escape into a world of each one of these protagonists, and some of them were entertaining, where it really kept me very engaged. To be honest with you, after this 3 months of fiction, when I went back to nonfiction book, I started nonfiction book and it felt like a breath of fresh air. I think I'm just at this point really loving nonfiction more than I love fiction. But nonetheless, I am squeezing now and then a fiction book. Definitely sticking to still women writers. Really been enjoying the women writers' writing style, and just, I think it's such a great way to support women writers today. Will I become a full-blown fiction reader at this point in my life? I don't think so. Maybe later in my life, but right now I'm still very much enjoying nonfiction. Did I find answers to my dilemma in this book? Absolutely not. But they were really interesting read. And I encourage, if you like fiction and you're looking for women writers, to look up some of these books, look up their descriptions, and see if it tickles your fancy, if it's something that of interest to you, and check it out yourself. And if you read any of this, comment and share below. Otherwise, I will see you all in my next video. Bye. Oh, I will do I do want to do video about occult books I've recently been reading because some of them are really interesting. So I'll try to make time to make that one. Okay, bye.